the Chris Tucker that we got now is Epstein Island Chris Tucker, not Smokey.
Oh, Lord.
What is happening in Hollywood that a guy that tough will be on the street waving a gun, screaming, "They are trying to kill me"?
Yeah.
What's going on? Why is Dave Chappelle going to Africa? Why does Mariah Carey make a $100 million deal and take her clothes off on TRL? A weak person cannot get to sit here and talk to you. Ain't no weak people talking to you. So what is happening in Hollywood?
These Epstein characters have existed throughout history, whether they were kings or what, human beings are human beings universally. So everybody is a supplier. Epstein, Weinstein, these guys.
The moment the trending files hit the public domain, something shifted in Hollywood. Millions of documents, thousands of images, hundreds of videos, all released by the Department of Justice after years of legal pressure and a congressional mandate. And almost on cue, a specific kind of celebrity went silent, not retired, not on vacation, just suddenly, conspicuously unavailable. Now here's the thing. Katt Williams and Dave Chappelle have been talking about the way Hollywood actually works for years. Not in vague terms. Specifically, they named names, described systems, and pointed at patterns that the industry would have preferred to stay invisible. When those conversations first aired, a lot of people brushed them off. Two comedians with opinions. That happens all the time. But then, the documents arrived, and the executives started stepping back, and the agency clients started cutting ties, and the business deals started going quiet. And all of a sudden, Williams and Chappelle were not just comedians with opinions anymore. They were starting to look like the two people in the room who had been paying the closest attention all along. Well, before we talk about anyone going quiet, it helps to understand just how significant this document release actually was. In December 2025, the U.S. Department of Justice released an initial batch of records related to Jeffrey Epstein's case, including photographs, investigative files, and evidence materials. That release was immediately criticized from both sides of the political aisle because a large portion of the documents came out heavily redacted, with some pages blacked out entirely. Survivors were outraged. Lawmakers demanded answers, and the public was left with more questions than clarity.
Thousands of documents from 2 criminal investigations into the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have been released in the US. Among the files are details of Epstein's contacts book, which offers a glimpse into the sheer number of his wealthy and powerful associates. Today is the legal deadline for the Justice Department to make the information public, although the Deputy Attorney General said earlier that not everything will be released in time to meet that deadline. Let's go straight to our correspondent, Tom Bateman, who is in Washington tonight. The scale of this release, Tom, is huge. What are we learning so far?
Well, this is a case, Jane, remember, that has convulsed the political system here in Washington. And the release of these files have been demanded by Congress, who in the end forced the hand of President Trump to create this legal deadline today. Now, we were expecting the files to be released around 8 p.m. UK time. In the end, they were a little over an hour late. And this is a vast trove of information. They've been released on the Department of Justice's website, categorized into former investigative records, files themselves that the Department of Justice had been looking into, now made public, and many, many new photographs.
The files include pictures of Bill Clinton, here appearing to be in a hot tub and in a swimming pool. The images are undated and without a clear location, but they are in a batch that appear to show Epstein in a series of foreign locations. Another shows the former president alongside Epstein himself.
To do there, but I think in terms of the political response to this, you know, the Department of Justice and the White House have been under huge pressure to pivot away from Mr. Trump having previously appeared to oppose the disclosure this year. His hand was forced, including by members of his own party, and we saw really full consensus in Congress for today's release. Now, the technical deadline was midnight. They've got this trove out before that. But we heard from the Department of Justice earlier today that many, many more hundreds of thousands of pages of files will still be released in the coming weeks. Now, that has already got Democrats on the House committee that had helped pressure this situation pretty angry, because they regard this as not being enough already, and they've been saying that in the run-up to it today. They are already accusing the administration of a cover-up, and they say a denial of justice to the victims and survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
Then came January 30th, 2026. That is when the DOJ dropped over 3 million pages of records, including emails, photographs, and video material. This was the release that changed the energy in Hollywood. Names began appearing in contact logs and email chains. Musicians, executives, directors, financiers, and figures from the broader entertainment world. To be clear, appearing in these records does not mean someone committed a crime. The Justice Department itself stated that no official client list exists, but being mentioned in the files of someone convicted of some of the most serious offenses imaginable carries weight, whether you are guilty of anything or not.
A lot of these documents will be similar types of documents to the ones we've had before, so things like flight logs on Epstein's plane, photographs, there are videos as well. Interestingly, which I don't think was true before Christmas, you had to sign a waiver to look at these documents, a kind of age-related waiver, which suggests that there may be some material in there that they believe could be, difficult or unsuitable for children to look at. And he did mention in his press conference, Todd Blanche, that that some of the material might be pornographic. We don't know to what degree that would be redacted. Certainly he's redacted, or they're redacting all the pictures of women in these files, but they've also said there could be mistakes because of the sheer amount of material, and they have this email address where people who feel their images or their material has been released erroneously can kind of email in. So it'll take a long time to assess the nature of this dump. It does comply finally with the bill that was passed in Congress. It's late, but it does comply. There is a small number of documents that may still be being held back at the moment in the Southern District of New York. That seems to be related to a particular court order there. And I think people will just start trawling through to see if there's anything new. It's worth pointing out that as far as we know, there are no active criminal investigations into others in terms of Epstein, and who's dead, of course, and Ghislaine Maxwell, his co-conspirator, who's in prison. We don't know of any other investigations relating to his activities. And in terms of President Trump and other high-profile figures, none of the victims have ever made an accusation against Donald Trump, nor Bill Clinton, indeed, who has featured heavily in some of the previous releases.
Yes, and we heard within that news conference, Todd Blanche say they rejected really, really strongly, the Attorney General and himself, that they don't take child trafficking seriously. You mentioned the president at a different stage. He also said, we did not protect Donald Trump in the release of the Epstein files. So cutting to obviously some of the accusations that have been made over the years, despite no evidence being put forward.
That's right, and in some of those documents that came out in that big dump, these things happened on Fridays. It happened on the Friday before Christmas. We got a Friday today, and then the other big one where I was involved was 2 days before Christmas, the day before Christmas Eve. That was the one that contained suggestions by some agents who were investigating Epstein that Donald Trump, the president, had been on Epstein's plane more than had previously been thought back in the 90s. Again, no allegation attaching to that, certainly by the investigators in that document. And also those documents before Christmas indicating that there were others.
The sheer volume of the release meant that the public, journalists, and investigators had months of material to comb through. And as each new name surfaced, the silence from certain corners of the entertainment industry became louder than any statement they could have made. Now, to understand why Katt Williams is such a central figure in this conversation, You have to go back to January 2024. Williams sat down with Shannon Sharpe on the Club Shay Shay podcast for what became one of the most watched celebrity interviews of the year. It was a nearly 3-hour conversation in which he named names, called out colleagues, and declared 2024 the age of truth. At the time, a lot of people wrote it off as a comedian venting, throwing shade at rivals, or chasing attention.
All of these big dick deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is, TG Jakes, any of them. All lies will be exposed. That's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way.
He was not doing any of those things. Williams was specific. He spoke about a system within the entertainment industry where powerful people protect each other, where certain favors come with long-term consequences, and where those who refuse to play along get pushed to the margins. He named Steve Harvey, Kevin Hart, Tyler Perry, Diddy, and others, not always accusing them of specific acts, but pointing to patterns he said he had observed over 3 decades in the business. What made the interview age so well is that by the end of 2024, several of the figures and dynamics he described had become major headlines. Diddy's arrest followed, other investigations opened, and Williams, who had turned down millions in deals to preserve what he called his integrity, was being called prophetic by mainstream outlets. By the time the Epstein-related documents hit in late 2025 and early 2026, Williams had already established himself as someone who spoke truths the industry preferred to keep quiet. Dave Chappelle's relationship with Hollywood's power structure is its own story. When he walked away from his $50 million Chappelle Show deal in 2005, the industry was baffled. Over the years, he has spoken in interviews about feeling pressure, about things happening behind the scenes that made him uncomfortable, and about choosing his peace over his platform. His comedy specials, particularly the ones released in the years since his return, have carried a consistent undercurrent. There is always a moment where Chappelle steps outside the jokes and speaks directly about power, about who controls what, about what it costs to be honest in an industry built on image management. His December 2025 surprise Netflix special, The Unstoppable, touched on the Diddy sentencing and broader themes of accountability in entertainment, and the internet immediately began cross-referencing his older statements with the new headlines. What connects Chappelle to this moment is not that he predicted specifics, it is that he described the culture accurately. He spoke about a Hollywood where certain relationships opened certain doors, and where the nature of those relationships was rarely discussed in polite company.
Now the thing with Dallon that made him such a meme towards, I feel like Dave Chappelle owe him a check, is because when Dave Chappelle did the Dallon situation, I feel like Dave Chappelle should have gave that boy a check, because that Dallon skit that Dave Chappelle did actually helped blow Dave Chappelle up. 100%, no matter how that sounds. And I was the reason, Chopper, they'll tell you, why we even did the Chappelle Show. Is because the first, I think it's the first season of Making the Band, it came out, and the Dave Chappelle Show came out. Like, I like comedy, me, you dig? I can lay back and watch comedy all day and night. Corey Mahokam and all them people, I can watch them all night. I seen the Dave Chappelle Show come out, and when we came back for season 2, I was just telling them, like, y'all gotta watch this Dave Chappelle, and everybody looked at me weird. But the publicist, who was actually Keith Murray, either baby mama or wife or something, she was actually our publicist. And she was like, he is funny, isn't he? I was like, yeah, you should get it. You should try to contact him. And next thing you know, she contacted him and came to the house, and that's how we ended up doing the Dave Chappelle skit. Thanks, Chop.
So that's what it was then. That's the reason why Dallon wasn't showing up to the meetings and all that.
Yes, that's exactly why. Dallon ain't show up because he felt like he can do better by himself. He already had the fame and the popularity. So why not? You dig? And to me, honestly, I should have done the same. My old young, dumb duck ass. I guess that's why when they say 18 and over, you should probably be 18 and over, because my young dumb ass ain't know no better. I was rubies, getting all this money and not even knowing the money that I'm thinking I'm getting is pennies on a dollar. Ain't that a bit?
When the files were released and executives began quietly stepping back from projects, when talent agencies started losing clients over disclosed connections, and when business deals were suddenly paused without explanation. It matched the picture Chappelle had been sketching for years. The punchline, it turned out, was never really a joke. When the January 2026 document release hit, the fallout in Hollywood was immediate, and for some, career-altering. Entertainment executive Casey Wasserman, whose talent agency represented major artists including Coldplay, Ed Sheeran, Kendrick Lamar, and Travis Scott, saw his connection to Ghislaine Maxwell made public through the files. Grammy-winning artist Chappelle announced almost immediately that she was no longer represented by his agency. Wasserman himself subsequently announced plans to sell the company.
Closer to home, the city's Olympic Organizing Committee, LA 28, is standing by its chairman, Casey Wasserman. Wasserman's name is in the latest batch of Epstein files. He traveled on Epstein's private jet once and later exchanged racy emails with Epstein conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell. Today, LA 28's executive board issuing a statement saying they've reviewed the situation and Wasserman fully cooperated. They say his relationship with Epstein and Maxwell did not go beyond what is publicly known, and given Wasserman's strong leadership, he will be staying on as chairman of LA 28.
Music executive Tommy Mottola also found his name in the records. His upcoming pasta sauce collaboration with Jimmy Fallon was put on pause. As one insider described the climate to Page 6, nobody wanted to be within a certain distance of anyone whose name had appeared in those documents.
Hey guys, so I want to deep dive a little bit more into this Tommy Mottola connection with Jeffrey Epstein. Rolling Stone did this huge article on Tommy Mottola and Jeffrey Epstein, and they start referencing how there was a problem that Tommy Mottola was having after being kicked out with his wife from a Palm Beach hotel and spa. According to the Rolling Stone, one of the emails that I went over the other day actually have something to do with the situation of Tommy and his wife being kicked out of this hotel spa. Now, we don't know specifically what happened with Tommy Mottola and his wife at this spa for them to get kicked out, but if you know Jeffrey Epstein and the saga, it's really odd because he was known to pick up victims at spas like this. And for whatever reason, Tommy Mottola felt the person that could help him with the situation that he was having was Epstein. There is a whole rabbit hole behind a lawyer that they talk about in this email. So Jeffrey Epstein tells Tommy Mottola to call him again, and Tommy Mottola said, "I'm telling someone my older sister is sick and I came home." And then Jeffrey said, "Look up Bradley Edwards." And Tommy Mottola says, "Is this the lawyer that she hired?" And then Epstein says, "Cousin." When I saw the name Brad Edwards, I was kind of shook because I know that this is a lawyer that represents so many survivors of Epstein. And remember, I found the old articles that said that Brad Edwards wanted to depose some of Epstein's famous friends, one being Tommy Mottola, back in 2009 after the Palm Beach case, because those survivors were coming forward filing lawsuits, kind of like we saw in the 2019 Southern District of New York case. And Jeffrey Epstein was actually trying to fight this, but then I found out that Jeffrey Epstein actually sued this lawyer named Brad Edwards. Like I said, this was the lawyer that also represented Virginia Giuffre back in 2009 with her lawsuit with Epstein. And Epstein actually settled with Virginia Giuffre for $500,000 in this lawsuit, so it didn't go to court. And that settlement document from Virginia Giuffre settling with Jeffrey Epstein was released to the public in 2022. And in that document, it said it released Epstein and any other person or entity who could have been included as a potential defendant from liability. The agreement was meant to stop future litigation regarding abuse claims against Epstein and his associates. And because of that agreement, when she settled with Epstein in 2009, this is a big thing that Prince Andrew tried to use to throw out her lawsuit years later that she filed against him. But the judge rejected the attempt to dismiss the case because of that argument. Virginia Giuffre's lawyers argue that the agreement was irrelevant to her case against Andrew, as he was not a party to the agreement and not a potential defendant in that specific Florida jurisdiction. So reading more about Brad Edwards and seeing that he was this huge attorney that represented so many of Epstein's survivors, something told me to look him up in the files. And I was finding really odd communications between him and Epstein himself, where Epstein always wanted to talk to him. And like in this email in 2015, he said, "Our deal?" to Brad Edwards, where Brad would say, "Talking to my guys this afternoon and trying to get in touch with the girls." And it really seemed like a lot of back and forth, like they'd agree to meet, agree to talk on the phone, and then there would be a couple snarky emails from Brad Edwards to Epstein like this. This one was titled "Confidential Settlement Discussions," and Brad said, "I expect a crispy new bill. Your personalized message can say whatever you would like, but it should include you win." Jeffrey Epstein kind of reporting like, "You need to look at the flight logs. These are all in Africa, not in Virginia." Brad saying Clinton was traveling on your plane at the same time you are paying for BR to travel to Thailand. So I assume that they are kind of arguing with one another about the Africa trip with Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker. Like I said, it really goes back and forth like this for a few years. Like, can he call you? Can he call you? Can you meet me here? But everything kind of changed in November of 2018 after these back and forth conversations between these two for years. Mind you, during this time, he has represented many, up to 30 of Jeffrey Epstein's survivors, and he is also dealing with a lawsuit that Epstein filed against him during this time.
Director Brett Ratner appeared in released photographs alongside Epstein. This came one day after Ratner had walked the red carpet for a high-profile film he directed, drawing the kind of timing that felt almost cinematic in its awkwardness. These are not convictions. These are not charges. But in an industry where association is currency and image is everything, a mention in the wrong document can be enough to empty a room. And that is precisely the point. The people Katt Williams was describing, those who built influence through a web of private relationships and unspoken loyalty, are now experiencing what happens when that web gets exposed to daylight. Not in a courtroom, in a press release, in a client departure, in a partnership going quiet. One of the most specific things Katt Williams said during his Club Shay Shay interview was this: he had spent 30 years in the industry collecting information, knowledge, and secrets. He said that the reason powerful people in Hollywood avoided him was not because he had done anything wrong. He pointed out that he had no personal scandals to speak of. They avoided him because they knew what he knew. The industry sidelines people not because of what they did, but because of what they know, and whether they can be trusted to stay quiet about it. That framing is worth sitting with because it explains a pattern that shows up repeatedly in how the Epstein-connected network functioned, according to the released documents and reporting from outlets like CNN and the Los Angeles Times. Figures in Epstein's orbit were connected not just through friendship, but through a dense layering of favors, events, introductions, and social access. Being in the circle came with benefits. Staying in the circle required discretion.
Jeffrey Epstein does settle with Brad Edwards. Mind you, he settles literally right before this is supposed to go to trial. And during this defamation lawsuit that Epstein filed against this lawyer, tons of women were going to come and testify against Epstein because Epstein sued Brad Edwards for trying to add his rich friends into being deposed in some of these women's lawsuits. Not about anything criminal, but about being around Epstein a lot, according to these survivors or victims. Some of these now women named Tommy Mottola as being someone who was around Jeffrey Epstein a lot back in 2009 because this is all stemming from the Palm Beach case. So with knowing that Brad Edwards represented so many of these victims, he also represented Virginia Giuffre, who settled with Epstein, who put in that clause that she couldn't go after him or people that were like his co-defendants in any more litigation. Brad Edwards settling with Epstein himself, them talking about other deals that they had, which I assume is probably with litigations with other of Epstein's survivors that maybe Brad represented. It really makes me wonder why Epstein was telling Tommy Mottola after he named Brad Edwards that he was safe. Tommy Mottola really didn't seem so sure. He said, "Are you sure? I don't have to do anything, just shut up and lay low." And it really makes me wonder. Now, this is not a fact, I don't know, but it is something that I want to know. I wonder if this is because maybe another one of these girls that they are talking about in this message did a settlement like Virginia Giuffre, where it says that they cannot go after anybody else. We know when Prince Andrew tried to use that clause against Virginia that she couldn't go after any co-conspirators of Epstein because of that settlement that she did with Epstein. It didn't work because she tried to argue that it didn't happen in Florida, so you're not viewed as like a co-conspirator. And according to the Rolling Stone, I find it weird that they are reporting that this incident about this email was something that happened with Tommy Mottola at the Palm Beach Hotel and Spa, which would be in Florida. So to me, it does bring big questions if maybe he fell under somebody's clause in a settlement agreement, and this is why Epstein's saying, don't worry, you're safe. And bringing up Brad Edwards. Brad Edwards did say when he was dealing with all of these lawsuits against Epstein, and even the one that Epstein filed against him, that he was being watched and followed during this decade-long pursuit of Epstein. Edwards even hired his own private investigator to follow private investigators that Epstein had assigned to track Edwards. And this was the thing because Epstein was doing this to the victims of the Palm Beach case.
Williams also spoke about turning down lucrative deals because of what they asked him to compromise. He described being offered $50 million on 4 separate occasions and walking away each time. That kind of financial sacrifice is only rational if you believe the cost of acceptance is higher than the benefit. And when you look at what is now surfacing about what certain deals and relationships actually involve behind closed doors, his math starts to look a lot less like stubbornness and a lot more like foresight. There is something telling about how the entertainment industry has responded to all of this. A few figures have issued carefully worded statements clarifying that their appearance in a document does not imply wrongdoing, which is true and which the Department of Justice has itself confirmed. Most, however, have said nothing at all. That silence is a strategy. Crisis PR professionals will tell you that in the absence of a criminal charge, the best move is often to stay quiet and let the news cycle move on. One CNN analysis described the options available to executives caught in the file's peripheral damage. Work with crisis management firms behind the scenes, wait for another story to dominate the headlines, or address things minimally and only when absolutely necessary. It works most of the time, but it also confirms something Williams and Chappelle have said repeatedly. The industry's first instinct when exposed is not transparency, it is containment. And when the people being contained are figureheads of culture, of music, of film, that containment sends a message to everyone watching.
When Martin Lawrence was in that chair, we talked about Blue Streak.
I love that.
He played a role in your life, I believe. How do you feel about him as a person, as an artist?
Martin Lawrence is the guy that showed everybody you can make it from DC to Hollywood. And I had a personal stake in his success. Every time he did something, it made me feel inspired and really good. And he was always real nice to me. He'd sit me down, what's going on with you, baby boy? What? We'd talk about comedy, whatever. And, you know, when we did Blue Streak, we were promoting it, and Martin had a stroke. He almost died. And then after that, I saw him, and I was like, oh my God, Martin, are you okay? And he said, I got the best sleep I ever got in my life. That's how tough he is. So let me ask you this. What is happening in Hollywood that a guy that tough will be on the street waving a gun, screaming, they are trying to kill me?
Yeah.
What's going on? Why is Dave Chappelle going to Africa? Why does Mariah Carey make a $100 million deal and take her clothes off on TRL? A weak person cannot get to sit here and talk to you. Ain't no weak people talking to you. So what is happening in Hollywood? Nobody knows. The worst thing to call somebody is crazy, is dismissive. I don't understand this person, so they're crazy. That's bullshit. These people are not crazy, they're strong people. Maybe the environment is a little sick.
Compare that silence to what Williams has done. He spoke for nearly 3 hours. He named names. He described mechanisms. He acknowledged he was taking a risk in doing so. And then he went back on the road and kept performing. Chappelle dropped a surprise special and spoke openly about accountability in the industry. Neither man went quiet. That contrast between those who disappeared and those who leaned in is the whole story right there. The release of these documents has done something that years of speculation, lawsuits, and investigative journalism could not fully accomplish on its own. It has made the conversation unavoidable. You can dismiss a comedian. You can call a podcast guest a conspiracy theorist. It is a lot harder to dismiss 3 million pages of government records. What this moment is forcing is a reckoning with the way powerful networks in entertainment, finance, and politics have historically functioned with almost no accountability. The filing of documents in the Virgin Islands civil case back in 2021 started a chain of events that culminated in one of the largest public document releases in recent American legal history.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. The new documents were filed late Wednesday, and they're a part of a lawsuit by the U.S. Virgin Islands. They reveal new testimony under oath from Mary Erdos, the head of the bank's Asset and Wealth Management Department. She said J.P. Morgan was aware by 2006 that Epstein was accused of paying cash to have underage girls and young women brought to his home. Although concerns were raised internally in 2006 and Epstein was convicted of in 2008, J.P. Morgan continued its relationship as a client with him until 2013. The new filings reveal that J.P. Morgan compliance staff brought up their concerns repeatedly. In 2010, one official said that Epstein, quote, should go. In 2011, other staffers discussed news articles connecting Epstein to human trafficking of underage girls. That evidence appears to be the basis for a new count in the U.S. Virgin Islands suit, which alleges the bank obstructed the federal government's investigation into Epstein's violation of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Epstein's large cash withdrawals drew the attention of bank compliance staff in 2006, who noted that he routinely withdrew $40,000 to $80,000 in cash several times per month, according to the suit. The transactions continued in the years after Epstein's guilty plea, though J.P. Morgan accepted his explanation that the money was for fuel and landing fees for his planes, even during years when Epstein was under house arrest. That's according to the USVI suit as well. J.P. Morgan declined to comment on the new filings, but J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon was interviewed on CNN last week, and he was asked if J.P. Morgan should have acted more quickly against Epstein rather than waiting years. Dimon replied, "Hindsight is a fabulous gift."
And for the first time, the names attached to that network are not just rumor. They are in index records, in emails, in photographs with timestamps. For Katt Williams and Dave Chappelle, this is not a victory lap. Neither of them has framed it that way. But it does change how people hear what they said. Statements that were dismissed as hyperbolic or paranoid now have a paper trail sitting somewhere in a Department of Justice database. The culture is being asked to look at itself honestly, possibly for the first time in a long time. Some people are doing that honestly. Others are hoping the storm passes. History tends to favor the ones who told the truth early, not the ones who waited to see which way the wind was blowing before deciding what to say. Two comedians spent years describing a Hollywood that ran on secrecy, mutual protection, and the quiet exchange of access for loyalty. The public largely enjoyed their work and moved on. Then, a cascade of legal proceedings, document mandates, and a Department of Justice release later, the picture they painted started looking a lot less like entertainment and a lot more like testimony.
Were there things that you didn't take in your career that you feel like were are there things to look out for, do you feel like?
Like there wasn't for me because I knew I wasn't going to take it, but I did want to get offered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And most of the stuff I wouldn't have believed until I had to get to a certain level to get to see the proof, you know?
Yep, and that's the majority of people out there. What he's speaking about is this larger kind of notion of a lot of people can't even fathom, can't even imagine just how absolutely awful some of the upper echelons of our society, of Hollywood, of Washington, D.C. actually are, because they're not capable of committing these actions, so they're not capable of really thinking about it or pondering about it. But once you kind of delve into the mind of the larger kind of sociopathic mind, that of course is encompassed in Washington, D.C., which per capita has the most amount of sociopaths than anywhere else in the world, you do see a larger kind of perspective of just how wild things could get, especially when you have individuals that are just granted so much power, so much money, so much influence, and they just kind of start acting in some of the strangest, most destructive, most nastiest ways.
You know what I mean? So I was as shocked as anybody about how powerful Harvey Weinstein was at the time that I was meeting with him, and how he could not be told no.
Yep, as of course these individuals literally thought that they were gods. And when you start looking into the Harvey Weinstein story, sure, he's in jail right now. Sure, he's complaining about the conditions. Sure, he's saying, hey, Judge, I can't last anymore in Rikers. When you look at how he was able to influence people, buy people, and essentially be able to control people, you see this larger kind of sinister network, as soon as you step back, showing, holy cow, wow. You're dealing with someone with huge amounts of influence that, of course, allows him to do whatever he wants, when he wants, with the full backing and support of local law enforcement, federal enforcement, as, of course, the intel agencies played a major role in here and knew everything that was going on here, since, of course, many celebrities were even warning about it and no one was listening to them.
That he get whatever he want. You follow what I'm saying?
They'll figure out some way.
Right. So I thought that didn't apply to me because I don't care about nothing but good business, right? Yeah. And then he offered me 2 actresses like they was playing cards. And I was like, what?
Yeah, that's essentially what a human trafficker does. Now, when you look at a lot of the Hollywood movies that you watched and enjoy, especially when you see that Weinstein logo in the beginning or end of it, you could bet your bottom dollar that a lot of those top celebrities did some of the most awful, some of the most inhumane. A lot of these people, slaves, especially some of the child actors here. Holy cow, when you go down the rabbit hole of child actors and Nickelodeon and all these other networks, especially Disney, holy cow, you kind of going through this rep and you're like, wow, I don't even want to go any further. But when you do, you get the perspective of, yeah, I could understand why these people have mental breaks later on in their lives. I could understand why a lot of these people have PTSD. I could understand why individuals like Bieber and Usher and all these other people that were small children, they're just kind of thrown into the midst, thrown into the freak-offs, thrown in to all the wild and disgusting contaminated baby oil. You start to realize, whoa!
The names in the files are not all criminals. Being in a contact book is not a conviction. But the pattern of who stayed loud and who went quiet after the release tells its own story. Business deals paused, agencies sold, artists cut ties. Statements were issued through lawyers, and through all of it, the people who had been speaking openly for years kept speaking. Katt Williams called it the age of truth back in 2024. It turns out, truth does not always arrive on schedule. But when it does arrive, it tends to arrive all at once, and it tends to find the people who were not prepared for it. The question now is not whether people in powerful places knew things they should not have. The real question is, how many more documents are still waiting to be read? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss out on any new videos. And until then, fam, keep it real.